and I'd like to introduce the world-famous Ivor Davis.
Thank you. Thank you for that overindulgent introduction. Tonight, you are in for a real treat. You will see America as you have never, ever seen it before, because it's unfolding through the eyes and the lens of America's leading photographer, Joe Sohm, who, of course, we are delighted to have here tonight. Now, Joe suffers from a rare disease, and it has been diagnosed as a severe case of wanderlust. And it appears to be incurable. Lucky for us, and I'm not sure about Leslie, but we'll find out later. So how in the heck do you photograph this enormous continent? Well, we will soon find out. But above all, how do you actually capture democracy on film? Stay tuned, as they say, because Joe's camera speaks volumes. Not long ago, a famous filmmaker was asked, "How do you photograph America?" He responded, "It's simple. You set Joseph Sohm loose with a camera." Joe has created an extraordinary cinematic photo mosaic with his stunning portraits of America, many of which you will see tonight. And in doing so, those pictures vividly portray what democracy is all about. Through his lens, he also captures America's extraordinary diversity, and he does it with joy and with unerring reality. For 40 years plus, his work has appeared all over the world in National Geographic, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, CNN, ABC, PBS, MSNBC, everywhere. His pictures miraculously show you the pulse of this nation. The best-selling author Paul Thoreau observed, "Joseph Sohm has an unblinking eye and a gift for summing up a whole complex mood in one single shot." Prince Charles, King Charles III, apologies, is a fan of Joe's work. He said, "Visions of America is a wonderful volume which captures the spirit of all that is best about the United States. Long live the King." But before you meet our guest, let me show you a wonderful short video, kind of Joe's calling card, which is the perfect introduction to Joe the photographer.
I wasn't born with a camera in my hands, but ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a photographer. By the time I was 5, I was snapping so many pictures with my imaginary camera that my father ended up giving me a real one for my birthday. From that day on, I viewed life through a viewfinder. Few things are more American than traveling the open road with an open mind. Roads personify democracy. They offer freedom to anyone who takes the time to travel them. Traveling in the footsteps of Steinbeck, Kerouac, and de Tocqueville, I traverse our land in pursuit of democracy. Next stop were all 50 states whose flags and signs I sought to photograph. I follow the open road wherever it takes me. Wherever this road takes me is where I want to go. roads became my friend, but America became my lover.
Please welcome Sohm. Thank you for coming to the Museum of Ventura County. A nuts and bolts question, obviously. From history teacher to this. How did you get into the business and come this way?
Well, the transition of my life is I've had three major segments. And the first one was I got a degree in American history, and that's where I, in essence, fell in love with America. And then number two, way more fun. I used to have a Beatle haircut, and I played bass, and I played in bands for a living. And obviously, I still have the bass, but I don't have the Beatle haircut. And I did manage to do a lot of touring from the Midwest. It was a six-piece band, and we played in Ramada Inns. Ramada Inn was a big deal in the Midwest. And then ultimately, I transitioned into taking imagery, and I fell in love with that. And then I had this aha moment, like in the 70s or so, thinking that if I were to combine all my interest into one project, I would never get tired of it, I would never get bored. So consequently, I thought, I need to make up a multimedia project that includes American history, my love of music, and my love of imagery. So that's how it happened.
You touched upon it with the answer, but you said that hitting the road personalizes democracy for you and offers you the freedom to anyone who takes time to travel on the road. Can you elaborate? What did you mean by that? Because it seems like if I get in my car and hit the road, it ain't going to happen to me. How does it happen to you?
Well, I think in a lot of ways democracy is about freedom and choice. And consequently, when you're doing a trip, for Thanksgiving, if you're going from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you pretty much have a choice. You can take Interstate 5 or you can take the 101. I would take a more peculiar route. This was all of what I've done was, you got to remember, without a cell phone and without GPS. So most of the time, I was probably geographically challenged because I seemed to go the wrong way. And I kind of turned going the wrong way into partially the right way if I found a good image. So frequently it was down roads that said, do not enter. And I kind of figured if they said, do not enter, there must be something down there. Well, the something down there was a German Shepherd that was a guard dog. So consequently, making choices every 5 minutes, every 8 minutes. And, you do that 40 times, you get really lost. And so Lost in America is what I've done. So, much of what I do is wait for the sunlight or the clouds or people to get out of my shots or whatever. So Leslie thinks in the past that I'm not a particularly patient person, but I think I am a very patient person because I sit around and I wait and I wait and I wait. And it's kind of gotten to the extreme now because I've gone from shooting, and you'll see a little bit of this, I've gone from exclusively shooting stills to now shooting time-lapse, which is very high resolution. Instead of one still, it's 1,000 stills over 60 minutes. And those 1,000 stills create a very large computer file, I'll tell you that. They can break any hard drive around. Or doing drone shots, or doing slow motion video. All of these things require a lot of patience, and much of it is just allowing people to show up, take their selfies, and get out of my way.
Yeah. Well, most people in the audience and around the world on Zoom listening in would say something that I think. I mean, I hit the road and I take some pictures and I come home and I bore the living daylights out of my friends, but you have managed not to do that. I mean, was there a moment of truth then when you said, hey, this is it?
Well, actually, I figured out a way to not bore one person at home. I bore a whole group of people in one evening. I guess, like any of us, you know, we like to get a response. And if you get a response with your artwork or whatever you do, I mean, it's harder to do with an accounting spreadsheet if you're an accountant. But with imagery, it's kind of eye candy. And my problem are most photographers that our friends Bob and Margie Moskowitz that are painters over here, their painting may take weeks or months to do. Mine can take 1/8 of a second. So consequently, I can build up inventory at a lot faster pace and bore you even longer.
In your films, you indicate that at a very early age you did get a camera because your dad was also a photographer. I mean, do you point to that as a key?
Well, you're going to see something very special tonight that isn't my work. My name is Joe Sohm. My father's name was Joe Sohm. His father's name was Joe Sohm. So technically, I am the third. So the other thing is, I was a very late baby. I was also a very large baby. Rumor was I was the heaviest baby in St. Louis in the hospital. I weighed 12 pounds. And I lost it all. I only gained 12 more pounds. My father, before I was born, was an appliance dealer, which was, he sold initially radios, records, Frank Sinatra, ultimately to television sets, to air conditioners, to washers, to dryers, etc. So my father's store was a veritable playground for me. There's somebody that liked to push buttons. There were buttons all over the place to push. So consequently, my father apparently also liked to push buttons because the 8mm camera that Kodak created is approximately 1932. Well, I found that my father in 1938, 6 years after motion picture 8mm cameras were invented, my mother and my father, before there were interstate highways, and before Route 66 was really a paved road, in the middle of the Depression, they left St. Louis and went on a road trip. And they went from St. Louis to Oklahoma, to Taos, New Mexico, to Santa Fe, over the Hoover Dam, 1 year after its creation. That's the way I could date these films, was to see it was Hoover Dam and when it was finished, all the way to Santa Monica, the Santa Monica Pier. They had their car taken to Catalina. They went up PCH to San Francisco. So anyway, my father shot all this stuff in 8mm film. And you're going to see some of this when we play this one movie in a little bit.
Most of us go on a trip sort of willy-nilly. I mean, we know where we're going, but we don't really do what you do. When you plan a trip, do you plan meticulously or do you just take off?
Kind of a combination of both. I'm very weather timing centric, meaning I just got back from New England for the third year in a row, and to my dislike, I found the colors very deficient. Instead of what the innkeepers would tell you, they're orange and yellow and red. They were more a little closer to UPS brown. So consequently, for 3 consecutive years, I found New England, whether it's climate change, whether it's not, a little deficient in its color. But I was there the whole time. And if you ever drove 3,757 miles in 7 states, I did. And I looked all over that place for vibrant leaves. Fortunately, I got them on film years ago, but not recently. And I do that in all, like if I go to Colorado, you want it in the snow. If you go to California in the spring, like when we had our super bloom, I was all over the super bloom. I got the super bloom sideways, upside down, I-5 near San Diego when it exploded in orange poppies all over the place. And that's when I actually flew my first drones over the, basically hundreds of acres of flowers, which was, the ultimate eye candy.
We are about to see a new video, a place you want to call home. Can you just give us a little intro to what we are going to see, Joe?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with small towns, and I guess that's why my wife and I gravitated to Ojai. And it turned out another person gravitated to Ojai in his teen years, and his name is Thornton Wilder. And many people believe that his later life play, the most performed play in the world. It plays every night, 365 nights a year around the world, our town. So it's going to open up with a quote, is what I more or less believe about small towns and their role in creating American democracy. But the songwriters are Ojai's Roger Kellaway, who grew up in New England, and Roger asked, "What do you want some songwriters, lyricists?" And I said, "Sure, who'd you have in mind?" And I kind of knew who I wanted in mind, but I didn't want to ask. And he said, "Well, I've been working with the noted Alan and Marilyn Bergman." And Alan and Marilyn Bergman have written 65 songs for Barbra Streisand, including The Way We Were, the theme for Tootsie, Windmills of Your Mind. I mean, they were regular Oscar, Grammy, Emmy winners. And so they did not have time to write my song, but Roger gave them my book, which, by the way, is for sale. And they gave them the book, and they flipped through it, and Marilyn Bergman, who just passed away last year and was noted on the Oscars, Marilyn said, "Well, the songs kind of wrote themselves. We just flipped through the pages of your book, and we wrote the lyrics. Roger wrote the melody. I told him I wanted kind of a Stephen Foster type of thing." The vocalist performed at the Ventura Music Festival, Calabria Foti, and she plays the violin solo too. And the footage is an intermixing of my life and your life. You might see yourself, you might see your hometown, you might see the school you went to. And you'll also see my father's footage. So I like to say this is by father and son, and it's called A Place You Want to Call Home.
In my hometown, houses had white picket fences, streets were named after trees, and shops had colorful awnings. We didn't lock our doors, and dogs didn't know about leash laws. Just outside St. Louis is where I grew up on Main Street, USA.
The front door could do with a new coat of paint, but the mat on the porch still says welcome. The mailbox is there, but its numbers are faint. It's a place that you want to call home. The tree that you climbed doesn't seem quite
That's my father.
as tall, but its apples are sweet.
That's my mother.
As September. Each bend in the road has a sight you recall. It's a place that you want to call home. Nothing like a small town to put you at ease. Everybody always says thank you and please. Barnyards and days there before you. Deep down in your soul, something peaceful is stirred. There's a reason it's known as the heartland. The sound that you hear is the song of a bird, and the voice of the cities nowhere to be heard. And the sun is as warm as the smile on your face. In this place that you want to call home, this place that you want to call home. Nothing like a small town to put you at ease. Everybody always says thank you and please. Barnyards and schoolyards, hay rides and sleigh rides and more. Your yesterdays there before you. Deep down in your soul, something peaceful is stirred. There's a reason it's known as the heartland. The sound that you hear is the song of a bird, and the voice of the cities nowhere to be heard. And the sun is as warm as the smile on your face. In this place that you want to call home, this place that you want to call home.
That's very moving, very moving. Joe, you told us about the Bergmans, but there was another voice that was you in the film that didn't sound like you. Can you tell us who that was?
Yeah, he sounded a little better than me. When you have the advantage of working with all-time great American songwriters, with the Bergmans, they at a certain point asked, as Roger kind of taught me, it's better to have them ask than you ask. So I sat around and waited until they asked, and they said, well, Joe, wouldn't you like to have a narrator for this? And I went, well, since you asked. I said, yeah. And they said, well, Marilyn said, well, who'd you have in mind? And I said, well, I kind of modeled the script that I wrote after Robert Redford. I thought he'd be a perfect narrator. She goes, well, we could call Bob, but I don't think he'd be right for this. And you always are concerned when Marilyn says something like that, because she could be taking you right out of Barbra Streisand. And so she would say, I think somebody like Clint Eastwood would be better. Because she said, you know, we're kind of associated with the left wing of the politics here, and so is Bob. But Clint's on the other side, and then you'd have balance so that your project is not about either party, which is technically a little bit what tonight is about, is finding that common binding that brings us together rather than keeps us separate. So we thought Clint Eastwood was a good idea, and Leslie and I had the opportunity to go up to Carmel and record it with him, and he did a great recording, but the sound engineer even took it from great to really great.
You are a musician, and you actually ended up playing in some of the videos. So do you regret not becoming the next whoever?
Well, I think I have one talent that's kind of emerged, and it's all related to my fingers. And I have 9 fingers that have done virtually nothing for me, but one that has basically got us a house and got us all these videos, and that's this finger. And ironically, it's exactly the same finger that I used to play the bass. So again, I was driving around looking at my fingers, and I was going, what have you guys done for me lately? You've done nothing, you know, but this guy, big deal. So consequently, I played the bass for 12 years. I never got it out of my system. I edited these videos. Most people that see videos say bass players are good editors because they're right on the beat. And everything you see of mine is pretty rhythmic, beat driven. And working with the Bergmans and Roger, I was working at such 30,000 feet that it was really difficult to remember that I can play bass too on these songs, which are about my story, the American story. So I kind of concluded that in my theory of integrating all of your talents into one medium, that I was missing one thing with this finger, and that was playing the bass. So I called up my closest friend from St. Louis, one of the most extraordinary talented people that I know. He goes by, his music name is Alan Ox, because he has a long name, Al Oxenhandler. He and I were best friends. He was my roommate. We played in bands together. We've known each other for decades. So we did this performance with the Boston Pops. The Boston Pops could not figure out who the male singer was, neither could the Bergmans, and I finally said, my friend Al can sing this song, you know, so I sent an audition tape to Alan Bergman. He listened to it and he said, yeah, he's not bad. So he was good enough. He did the Boston Pops. Afterwards, Al and I went into the recording studio recently, a couple years ago, and there's kind of a sad story associated with this because my best friend in St. Louis, Al Ox, who is singing on this and did the arrangements as well, he passed away from COVID last year. So, but we got this recorded in this, when he walked off the stage in Boston, he said, thank you, Joey, this is the highlight of my life. So this song is kind of my theme song. It's about putting on some blue jeans, hitting the road, hitting Route 66, not knowing where you're going, in open roads and open mind.
Roads personify democracy. They offer freedom to anyone who takes the time to travel them. Few things are more American than traveling the open road with an open mind, and I should know. I come alive when I'm behind the wheel going someplace I've never been before. I follow the open road wherever it takes me.
Across the railroad tracks and out of town, I hit Route 66 with all my windows down. I'm on my way to places that I've never been before. To me, an open road's an open door. I pass the old red barns, they've seen it all. They've weathered winter snows and felt the rains of fall. I feel the wind across my face and smell the summer day, scent of apple trees and new mown hay. The river follows where I'm going, with fields and meadows green and growing. I love not knowing what's around the bend, for every mile's another friend. I know the feeling that my wheels like, because it's just what freedom feels like. From sea to sea, from shore to shore, an open road's an open door. That's what an open road is for.
For the rest of my life, the open road called. Back roads became my friend, but America became my lover.
John and I went through your pictures and we chose an assorted bunch of pictures to show tonight. And as we do it, John, as you give it to us, Joe has fabulous stories to tell about each one. So in no specific order, John, let's see some of the stills and hold it while Joe tells us more about them.
This one is doing my first ticker tape parade, which was for the Iraq war. And that was before Giuliani cracked down on the press in these parades. So instead of having a press pass, you just kind of joined the parade. So I joined the parade and I followed these guys. And the best thing about doing these kind of events are that you're having to go as fast as that jet airplane that they're seated on, being pulled by a truck down 1 million people on Broadway. And while I'm shooting this shot, I accidentally turned around and saw another shot. So all this has to be done on your feet while you're walking rather fast. This is the Women's March, the largest event in Los Angeles history. It was more than 1 million people after, 6 years ago. And in the front row is, I think you'll find Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin. I'm not sure. The interesting thing about this shot was I went down there to get it. I told Leslie I was going to go down and photograph this event. I had no idea more than 1 million people would show up in downtown LA. I got in the middle of the crowd, and I don't usually get claustrophobic. I got major claustrophobic, and I just said, I got to get out of here. So I had all my cameras attached to me, and I just started to go. Just getting out of the place was difficult, and by accident, I ended up at the front of the parade. And this is, they didn't ask me to lead it, but because I wasn't a woman. But I did get at the very front, and I was shooting video, so I was able to shoot, and the key skill in this is not just the index finger, it's being able to walk backwards, change lenses, and stay out of the view of somebody behind you and in front of you. So you need kind of like my drone has little obstacle avoidance things around your head. That's why I'm bald, because I've got extra lenses in the back.
The next picture is a remarkable picture and a great story.
Well, that's that shot. And this is what Leslie suggested I shouldn't do in the future. This is an 11-story building. And the way I shoot imagery is kind of what one of my photo agents in Chicago told me. Always get high when you can. And that's why I'm falling in love with the drone, because it's a lot easier. So when I was surrounded by 1 million people, the whole time I'm looking up and looking like, where's a building that's open? Because it was a Saturday. You know, everything was closed. I found one, and I'm currently, my love affair is with parking structures, particularly parking structures near noted icons like capitals. So I just did 3-4 capitals where I did them all. Capitol here, parking garage here. And I'm able to go to the top floor, avoid the security cameras, go to the very top and shoot down on the Capitol. In this case, I was really shooting down because what I was trying to get were 1 million people in one photograph. And I didn't get 1 million, but I got 478,613.
Not too shabby, not too shabby. Hit the next picture, please.
This shot, I for a short amount of time, I lived in Beverly Hills on Doheny and Wilshire. And every morning when I would get out, I would take a little walk. And, you know, this is my only day to be kind of walking in Wilshire, you know. So I'm walking in Wilshire, and right in front of the Beverly Hills Savings was this homeless guy, you know. And I thought, gee whiz, you don't see this in Beverly Hills too often. They kind of scoop these guys off the street pretty quick. And so I got the shot, and I thought the shot really was interesting because of Beverly Hills Savings, and that this could coexist with that, because photography in a lot of ways are street photography, the juxtaposition of things. So consequently, I had to lay down on the ground with him with a wide angle lens, you know, kind of looking up without even being able to look through the viewfinder and guessing where the image is. And then I took my walk, and then 5 minutes later, he was gone. So these kind of shots that fall in front of your face, literally fall, you gotta jump on them because they're not gonna be there in 5 minutes.
Thank you. Next picture, John.
This is, a lot of these things are from Southern California. This is why, you know, people like to make films here, because there's so much stuff separate of Hollywood. But this is Veteran Cemetery at UCLA, and it's they put out, you know, 58,000, I forgot how many flags. But you got to get there extra early when the Boy Scouts, you know, put the flags in every different spot. And I just thought this was kind of an iconic, you know, classic Americana image.
Next, John.
Well, we all love and have different feelings about Kobe Bryant, but if you don't have Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant will do. And so consequently, when he won his 5th, not 6th like Michael, but when he won his 5th, he did the tour. And I went down there, once again, from Ojai. It's about a 90-minute drive. The key thing is parking for me. Everything is about parking, how to get my vehicle and the cameras as close as possible to the event. The RV is great because I virtually sleep on the shot. I get to the shot, I park the RV there and pray I don't get a parking ticket and I can shoot it. Something like this, I got out, walked 2 blocks, and there was Kobe Bryant. So I had to run through the crowd, and again, Cindy Burton, who worked for the New York Times, she would know this. You're changing from a wide-angle lens, putting that in your bag without dropping it, getting your telephoto lens out, and doing this, and then getting up to the front of the crowd so that you can get a clean shot of Kobe. This was the 50th anniversary of the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech in Washington. I was fortunate to go to that, and that's part of your question earlier. Are these events with landscapes are completely different than presidential politics, because those events demand that I be at a certain place at a certain time and get there 2 to 3 hours before so that you get in. The landscape doesn't care. Is Joe Sohm here? I'm gonna do a nice sunset. This particular shot was when you do these events, you don't know who's going to show up. You know, I mean, in this case, I got 3 presidents, Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, and Barack Obama all spoke. Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton was there, and then lo and behold, right below me like this was, you know, I was elevated where I like to be. I like to look down on people. I was able to look down, and there was Jesse Jackson. And my friend, his father was a noted senator, Senator Vance Hartke. His son, Jan Hartke, said, I do believe I know Jesse, and this is the best picture of Jesse I've ever seen. This one was on 2007, and this was celebrating the 400th anniversary of the English arriving at Jamestown, Virginia. So it was a big enough event that Queen Elizabeth came. The smartest thing I ever did was, rather than trying to get American press passes for this event, I don't know how I thought this, but I went for British press passes. And I got a British press pass, and that did me way better than an American one. I mean, I got into the White House, and her tour was 7 days. So like I was there on Monday, I was there on Wednesday. Oh, it's you again, Joe, how are you doing? This particular event is actually where the English built their fort at Jamestown. And lo and behold, she's walked in by Vice President Dick Cheney, and that's Sandra Day O'Connor, the first female from California as a Supreme Court justice in the image. But the Queen truly does have a different hat for every occasion, because I saw them all. So this is hints on some of the stuff we'll talk about later. But the peaceful transfer of power, you know, the thing that everybody's talking about, it actually happened. I actually saw it. I actually took photographs of it. And H.W. Bush didn't have many good things to say about Bill Clinton during the campaign. Bill Clinton didn't have too many good things to say about H.W. Bush. But in the end, they all shook hands. It was the American thing. We said, okay, I lost, you won, you're in. So in this particular event, this is what's amazing about politics. It's really kind of like a traveling circus, and you never know what the circumstances are going to be. They travel with, by the way, with these rented U-Haul trucks that it's like a prop store. It's like a Hollywood thing, you know, and they've got shelves, and they got books, and they've got hat racks, and they got chairs. And the best thing about President Obama was he's the only guy I ever saw that had, as Leslie would say it, costume changes. He had, if we did an event at 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m., he had 4 different outfits for that. All the other candidates, same suit, same day. So, and I knew this is why Obama's going to win. He's best dressed. So this event, Leslie was there, was in 2004. And this was in Little Rock, Arkansas, which we kind of took a liking to. The only negative to the whole thing, this is the opening of Clinton's library, was that Bill Clinton had a heart attack 30 days before it opened. That was no good. He's a little thin and gaunt there, but he lit up when the library did. And he did get his new best buddies, H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. And Jimmy Carter is looking pretty dapper there as well. Well, the unusual thing about this was the most horrendous rainstorm I have ever seen in my entire life. I have never seen it rain harder. So consequently, this is absolute definitive proof that men do wear hairspray. This shot was of interest because the night before, literally the day and the night before Bill Clinton being elected the first time in 1992, he did a cross-country trip to every major American polling city in the United States, from the east to the west coast and back to the Midwest, where he would vote in Little Rock. So consequently, I got on the press plane for the whole time, and ironically, this landed in my hometown in St. Louis. This is in St. Louis at Lambert Airfield in an airplane hangar. That's how you move these events, whether it's Trump or Clinton or whoever, how you move them quickly towards the end of the campaign. They just start doing things at airports. The plane lands. Trump is the only one I've ever seen that used Superman soundtrack music to win the plane. It was choreographed to when the plane landed. Now, I have to say, it was incredibly dramatic, significant thing that he did. So, I mean, he kind of cast himself as the lead character, which is what they all do. This picture, when Hillary was running, and why many people thought Hillary was going to win, I thought, I've got one of the few pictures that are going to have two presidents, a twofer, in one shot. So I was all ready with this shot, but I didn't get the twofer. So this was a early learning experience. The first time, like, they'd be in the bus, then there'd be a second bus, that'd be the press bus. They'd allow, Cindy would know this, but they allow the press bus to be there first so they can catch the arrival of Bill and Al. So I, in my naivety and my newness to shooting politics, I would follow the pod. They get off the bus, and then I would follow this crowd of 1,000 people moving down, the crowd. So I came up with a new theory. So instead of being on the press bus, I could beat them if I knew their schedule and if I had a rental car. So I would just rent my own car and drive in front of the buscapade. Then I would pull off to the side of the road and get them going by through the middle of Texas, the middle of Arkansas, the middle of Missouri, which are very Americana shots. And then ultimately I realized, instead of going anywhere, this is another thing. I just watched this Michael Jordan thing again. And he would have this phrase. He said, well, when I was younger, I would chase all the shots. I would run over there and take a shot. I would run over there and take a shot. And I said, well, that's kind of what I do, with my one finger. And so consequently, I decided, hey, maybe I'll do what Michael does. He said, let the shot come to him. So when they got off the bus, the 1,000 people went over there. I said, I know they're getting back on this bus, so I'll wait in front of the door. So I just waited there the whole time. They came back and they were right in front of me. I had the best position. And at that point, that's where I saw this sign, and I thought this was a classic. This is Ronald Reagan, of course, the first president I ever photographed. And this is actually in Century City. They, as I said, they had their own sets. He was a very pleasant man. I spent, 38 seconds with him, and I was gone and got the shot. So the shot I remember about this were two things. One is, this is in North Carolina when Obama won the state of North Carolina. So you can tell by watching the size of the crowds how these states are trending in their polling. I've got my own internal polling because I'd have to decide whether I'm shooting both candidates too. I'd know where the other candidate was. So all I would do is to fly into a swing state and do what Mike Jordan does, let the shot come to me. So I'd be in Ohio, I'd be in Pennsylvania, I'd be in Wisconsin, letting them land. They're not going to go to California. There's no reason to. So this shot, there were so many people there, and it was fairly warm, if I recall, and some woman fainted in the middle of the crowd, and the only person that knew it was Senator Obama, and he saw the person faint, and he took his water bottle at the bottom, and he threw it out to the crowd, and he gave it to the woman. And knowing my proclivity to wanting to be up, you know, I got into that. It's like a little cherry picker, and I went to the very top, and then I can look down and I can see the entire crowd. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get that shot. Well, this is all about express. I don't think I need to say anything.
But okay, don't say anything. Let's move to the next one.
You know, there's you can see editing in the media pretty clearly as to what their facial expression is. And if you want to say something bad, I got a shot at that. If you want to say something good, I got a shot at that too. Photographing Trump events were challenging, particularly when the entire 40,000 people were screaming, "You did it, you're the bastards, meaning the press." You know, like we were in a pen. We couldn't get out, you couldn't go to the bathroom. So I had to sit on a stage, you know, like 40 times bigger than this, with a bunch of other camera people and wait 3 hours, because when you're shooting these events, you're not on Joe's schedule, you're on their schedule. And, you know, if they got held up at the airport or whatever, you know, you're waiting. So I go to these Trump events, you know, he's supposed to speak at 1. Well, he doesn't speak till 2:30. But to clear security, you have to get there at 9:30. So I'm there from 9:30 to 2:30 before he speaks. Lo and behold, the first time I ever heard him speak, I didn't realize he's going to speak for 2 hours. So consequently, once you're on that stage, you can't leave. You can't go to the bathroom. The crowd is yelling at you. The crowd is holding up signs. You're bad people. So consequently, I just had to sit there. So I finally got so bored, I started doing all these experiments. So this is 9 exposures of Donald Trump speaking. I guess you would call this double speak, but it would be 9 speak. Politics it's like what Alan Bergman said to me about music and writing lyrics. There's a lot of luck involved. You know, like with Bill Clinton, I mean, basically he did win because Ross Perot ran. You know, George W. Bush did win because Ralph Nader ran. So these things happen, you know, and they're kind of like meat cleavers that land in the middle of a crowd that changes everything. And when it changes, that's why politics is extremely volatile, and that's why I would say we're all going to be voting, of course, in the next week and stuff. So America is politically really about managing symbols, and media people try to control those symbols to create the message that they're trying to say. But that message is only good so long when that guy, you know, like in the 80s, starts crying, and that ended his campaign at the moment. So that's why you got to show up as a photographer, because you never know what's going to happen.
We want to do a Q&A, but I want to finish the conversation, Joe, with a beautiful piece of film that you know what it is. It's the fanfare. And so if you could hit the final video.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin with a question. How do you photograph democracy? And it's this question that's animated my 50-state, 40-year quest to capture the American idea on film. But that beckons another question. How do you photograph an idea? You might liken an idea, if it were a painting, to negative space. You could define what it's around, but you can't define really what's it. And you might ask, why am I so compelled to photograph this idea called democracy? Well, it's because it's the central organizing principle of American civilization. It is our DNA. And it's who we are as a people, and it's a gift we give to each generation of Americans. And it's this idea that has triggered the rise of the common man. But I circle back to my question, how do you photograph an idea? And how do you translate democracy into soaring melodies and thunderous percussion? Well, ladies and gentlemen, and all you common men and uncommon women, the answer awaits you. Maestro.
Beautiful. That's terrific. Just great. I think it's time for questions from the audience from our Zoom worldwide viewers. So, anybody go ahead with the Q&A, please.
So, Joe, the question that we have from our Zoom audience comes from Jim Heller. His question is, what kind of camera do you favor and why?
Well, that's an interesting conversation because I've had the advantage over 40 years to shoot 1/3 of my career with Nikon. This is called covering your bets. 1/3 of my career with Canon, and I've recently switched to Sony mirrorless cameras because all of what you're seeing in that piece, the interesting thing is everything prior to being age 70 was a still photograph. Everything that moves was shot in my 70s with a Sony mirrorless camera or a drone.
So I understand you have had some rock and roll experience.
Playing rock and roll, yeah, I played in a lot of rock bands. I also produced, beginning in Ventura, I produced a show for Governor Jerry Brown at the Ventura Fairgrounds, and it included Crosby, Stills and Nash, Jacques Cousteau, and maybe some of you were here then, but it was a sold-out crowd. And the only thing I knew about Ventura was they said it never rains in Ventura in October. It poured down rain all day, and that racetrack where they put the concert and 20,000 people, 10,000 people, I don't know how many, and Jackson Browne was the other guy. So when I came up, it all cleared. They didn't tell me that part either, and a rainbow came out over the fairgrounds. And I was, and that day, Jerry Brown gave me a big pat in the shoulder because he was running for re-election. But other than that, I'm the bass player.
So you've talked about how technology has helped you with drones and new cameras and such, but I'm sitting next to my 14-year-old son here, and we all have iPhones, and we all think we're professional photographers these days. So is there a future for photographers in America or globally now, in your opinion, or what is that?
Well, honestly, if you had asked that question to me 10 years ago, I would have given you a different response. I believe, and I believe Cindy Burton would probably agree with this. You have to be today, society was very segmented and very specialized. That's American capitalism at its best. There's photographers, there's graphic art designers, there's typesetters. Well, they're virtually all out of business. Photographers cannot be exclusively a photographer the way that I was, or maybe Doug Barr was, the noted photographer seated back there. So consequently, I think you have to do kind of what I'm doing now in my 70s, broaden your skill base and not use one finger, but you got to use 7 or 8. You got to be able to do several things, whether that's writing, whether that's editing, whether that's, but it has to be a combo. The photography, the camera might be the little train engine that pulls the train down the tracks, but you've got to have other cars in your train.
Joe, what a pleasure. I remember when you did Visions of America with New West, 1998, 2000, let's say 20 years ago. How has your vision, or has your vision, changed in the ensuing 2 decades?
Well, that's a kind of a profound question. I think it's safe to say, without saying anything really political, is that we share a concern about the fate of this country. America, the reason I got involved, with this is because I believed that in the second millennium, the most profound event that occurred was the rise of the common man and the beginnings of democracy in America. And I do believe that unless we continue to keep democracy alive in the United States, that we could be in trouble. But my vision of America is less exclusively about the political structure and more about we the people and what we've done. So what I have hoped to show in these pictures, whether they were taken yesterday in New England or a presidential campaign 30 years ago, is I wanted to show and leave evidence of this is what collectively we have done as a people. And so consequently, these houses, these towns, these cities, these buildings, these sporting events, all of this happened under the rise of the common man in the United States. So in that respect, my vision is the same. My concern is there with probably everybody else.
I believe that is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you all so much for coming. Joe, thank you for joining us this evening. Ivor, as always, thank you so much for bringing this all together.
And thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Ivor.
Brilliant.